Hayden Howerton. And Hayden is a good friend of the show. Hayden, thanks for jumping on with us this morning, bright and early. I'm excited to have you on.
I'm excited to be here, man. I already got my coffee going this morning, so thanks for getting me on. Can't wait to talk some ACC football as a whole. But should we get going with the Wake recap, or do you want to jump right into Miami? Because I feel like you can't talk about one without the other, as this has been an up and down SMU Mustang team so far this year.
Exactly. We've got to start with Wake, 13-12 loss to Wake Forest on the road. And we talk about a lot of across the ACC landscape of, and our friends of the show, Eric McLean and Kelly Graham, call them you better nots. And that was a you better not type of game for SMU, sandwiched between Clemson and Miami, the two name brands. And they go up to Wake Forest and just didn't have it offensively. Defense played a great game, but this sets SMU back, similar to Miami in this ACC championship race now.
It's absolutely brutal. I mean, we had this one circled all offseason as the trap game where you sandwich them between essentially our two biggest brands on our schedule with the Clemson Tigers and the Miami Hurricanes. And like you said, the most disappointing thing was this offensive performance in a unit that I think upgraded in so many facets to enter the year. You get Kevin Jennings back in his second year. I think you upgrade at offensive line. I think your receiving core is really solid. You bring back both tight ends. The only downgrade was losing Brashard Smith to the NFL. But even then, I thought we had a stable of running backs that could do enough with how many guys we backfilled and things like that. But ultimately, to go out on offense, have less than 250 yards, 12 points, is really disappointing in a team that has really been their identity to go out on the road and have offense at least play well. So I was very disappointed in that. Defensively, I think this team has improved every single week. I gave them an A+ over on our show for their performance. You give up 13 points, but you did everything you needed them to. They were put in some bad spots by the offense and special teams, but ultimately they came out with their best day so far this year. 5 turnovers forced by this SMU defense. Club takeaway was definitely setting up shop out there in Winston-Salem, but the defensive line has also been one that we've been watching this season that after the non-conference slate, I think maybe we had written off a little bit, but 2 sacks, 16 pressures on the day for the defensive line. A huge day for them, even with the absence of Cameron Robertson, as they turn around and they get it done on their side of the ball. Special teams was one that I think was even more disappointing than the offense. You leave 4 points out there as you get an extra point blocked. You pull a field goal to the left where the holder gave the kicker laces. And ultimately, this special teams unit just needs to be able to keep the other two in the game as you lose the one against Baylor in non-conference. You miss 3 field goals. And then to turn around on Saturday and have a very similar performance was very concerning for us over on our side, Billy. But ultimately, it's very disappointing now to have your first conference loss as part of that 20-game conference win streak get snapped on the road at Wake Forest. You knew the streak wouldn't last forever. I'm just very surprised that it happened when it did.
Yeah, that's the obviously tough thing about it. That conference winning streak is gone out the door, and most people, you look at the preseason, they probably would have just circled that Clemson game and say, hey, that's where it goes to die, but it doesn't. It falls at Wake Forest, which is the state of North Carolina has not been good to SMU on the football side of things for the most part. So a difficult loss, but let's also look at Miami here. They woke up in the second half and rolled 42-7 over Stanford, but it was 7-7 at the half. It was a game that, you and I were touching down and we saw the score and it was like, oh man, this one is getting interesting and stayed interesting for the entire first half before Miami just did what Miami was expected to do and really flexed its muscles.
And I do want to give props to Stanford as they gave us a little bit of trouble in the first half as well. They're a football program that even with an interim head coach right now, I think they are playing pretty well as they probably can with this current situation that they've got going over there. Andrew Luck's doing a really nice job of installing the culture. I saw that they're even picking up some recruits in this kind of weird situation that they have going out there. But ultimately, the story of this season so far has been Miami and how they've been able to respond. Miami's been a team in the past that has had really great first halves of the season. And then on the back half, they end up trailing off. They lose a couple games down the stretch, knocks them out of the ACC title race. So far this year, I mean, they have played really well in all but one game against the Louisville Cardinals. And for Carson Beck in that game to throw 4 interceptions and that really be the reason that they have their only blemish on their record. If Miami can take care of the football, they can beat anybody. They only have 7 turnovers on the year, 4 were in that Louisville game. You take away that game, they're top 3 in the country as far as taking away as far as hanging on to the football. But they're very talented top to bottom on their roster. It's going to be one of those games that SMU is going to have to grind this thing out and get a little bit lucky just because of how deep they are. There's not many holes on this Miami Hurricanes roster, and it starts with their defense. 11th total defense in the land. They're top 10 in scoring. They have a really great player on the edge, Ruben Bain Jr. I think a guy that could end up in New York, just depending on how this season goes. I don't know if he'll win the Heisman, but he is certainly one of the best defensive players in the country. And if SMU points their whole game plan to stop Ruben Bain Jr. from wrecking shop like he has so far this year with 40 pressures, it's going to be one that everybody else is going to have to win their one-on-one battles. You're going to have to take care of Akeem Mesidor, who's going to, hopefully, for Miami, make the return this week. And their defensive line will be at full strength, which will be interesting for SMU's offensive line that has been banged up lately. It's going to be one of those things that on our defensive front, you're going to have to overcome some adversity. This Miami offensive line is also very good. Multiple midseason All-Americans. Carson Beck is at his best when he's comfortable. And for SMU to have success on Saturday, you're going to have to get after the quarterback and force a couple of turnovers.
And I think for this game, I mean, this is where SMU has to find those holes like Louisville did at times to exploit them, because you're not going to get that Carson Beck that played against Louisville. I mean, this is a team that takes care of the football. They don't really give you many holes to poke in their game. They might kind of fall asleep from time to time. You look at late against Notre Dame, late against Florida State, things like that. But Miami, despite the loss to Louisville, is still, you know, you could argue 1 or 2 in the ACC. I mean, yes, Georgia Tech doesn't have a loss, but I'm sure there are many people willing to make the argument that Miami would win on a neutral field right now against Georgia Tech. And, you know, the way the Yellow Jackets are playing, though, they're going to end up in Charlotte if they keep things rolling. Same with UVA. They've got to win out. Miami, they have to win out. They need some help. That's where this weekend at SMU is so critical for both teams as they do step into this spotlight, 11 a.m. on ESPN, nationally televised game. You know, the ACC slate this weekend is you know, it's just okay. It has a lot of games that really shouldn't, you know, have too much intrigue around them. But SMU Miami does. 2 one-loss teams in ACC play. It's an elimination game. And whether you're Miami, you're SMU, you've got to come out trying to fire on all cylinders so that you're not playing from behind in this one.
And that's going to be critical because SMU has not started well in their last few games. And you can tell as they kind of slug their way through that first half, SMU is notorious for taking the ball first after the coin flip, which is great. If you can get off to a fast start, you can drive the field and you can get points. But ultimately, SMU has not done that this year. For us to be competitive in this elimination game where you're going to have ACC huddle on site, you know, we're going to have all of our friends out there on the boulevard, which is going to be electric. I'm really excited. I can't wait to see them. But SMU is going to have to come out of the gate. And one of my keys to the game on our show is that no matter what happens with the coin toss, offense or defense up first, you have to go out and make a statement on that opening drive. Whether that's you get after the passer and you sack Carson Beck on the first 3rd down, or Kevin Jennings has one of his better early game performances of the year. You drive the field and even get a field goal there to where you can play from ahead, you can get some confidence into that stadium, you can get the energy going, and hopefully this team feeds off of that and is able to play at a high level because this team feeds off of the energy in the stadium. We go to Clemson a couple weeks ago, everybody was fired up. We go to Wake Forest last week, and no shot at the Demon Deacons, but it was not the same environment. You know, there were maybe 10,000 people there at kickoff. It just felt very slow to open the game. SMU essentially goes 4 or 5 and out. They had the first drive extended by a penalty. But other than that, they could not get anything going on offense. So this team is going to need some early confidence-inspiring plays. You know, maybe some short crossers for Kevin Jennings just to get him something going. Maybe some early and easy runs that we can just get to our base stuff. But ultimately, you're going to have some early success to inspire some confidence in this team.
No question about it. You look at the ACC rates right now. If you're SMU, you're trying to obviously stay alive in that, Hayden. If you're Miami, you're trying to stay alive in it. Right now, it's Georgia Tech, UVA. Let's get a little prediction here. Let's look ahead in the magic 8 ball of Hayden Howerton. Does Georgia Tech and Miami, or does Georgia Tech and UVA win out this ACC slate and get to Charlotte and shut out programs like Miami, like SMU, like Pitt that are trying to get in there with those 1 losses.
I think one of them does. I think Georgia Tech is probably my pick to win out the rest of their games. I mean, I think that matchup at the end of the year with the Georgia Bulldogs, I don't think they're going to go unbeaten, but ultimately, I think they're going to end up at 8-0 in ACC play. I think they will be one of the teams waiting in Charlotte heading into the last week of the regular season with their spot already clinched. UVA, on the other hand, I think has gotten in some dicey situations. They go on the road to North Carolina. They have to win that game in overtime. Chapel Bill goes for 2 in overtime. He's got all the momentum. Why not try to win the game right there? I love the decision. Ultimately, they come up short. UVA hangs on. They stay unbeaten, but they do have a tough road ahead. They do have to go play Duke, who I think is one of those teams that probably has the best shot to beat them late this year. I think the Duke Blue Devils have something cooking over there, and they almost got after us last year when we made the trip up to Durham. And so I look at the job that Manny Diaz has done over there, and I think Johnny Brewer, as the offensive coordinator, has got something cooking out there where that's going to be one of those games that I probably have circled as my ACC huddle pick of the week, so to speak. But ultimately, I think Georgia Tech goes unbeaten. I don't think UVA does. I think it's going to be one of these one-loss teams that ends up in the conference championship race, to where maybe it's Miami, maybe it's SMU. The picture will certainly be a little more clear after this weekend, but there are a lot of teams that could make a running here for the trip to Charlotte.
If Pitt can get by this game all the way out at Stanford, I'm watching Pitt as well. They've got a red-hot quarterback. It's very similar to SMU and how they inserted Kevin Jennings. They went to Mason Heichel, and the rest of their schedule, though, would be just incredible for them to win out, but it would be quite the story in college football if they finish up, they find a way to win at Stanford this weekend, and then they get a bye, and boy, do they need it because their final 3 games, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, and Miami. Holy cow. If Pitt were to pull it off, that would be incredible. And they'd have 3 signature wins, at that point to get that done. So it would be something else if Pitt finished it out. But yeah, SMU, Miami's going to be, the pick for a lot of teams or a lot of people around the country to get into Charlotte. But we'll see. Their last game of the year for the regular season is could very well be a play-in game to that ACC championship if one of UVA or Georgia Tech falls, and maybe Georgia Tech falls to Pitt. We'll see. But it's going to be incredible to watch. We're going to be tracking it all. You can find Hayden Howerton at ontheponyexpress.com, a part of the On3 Rivals Network, the On the Pony Express podcast. He's got a film breakdown each week, so make sure you guys check it out and continue to follow Hayden. We'll keep having him on. We've got to have in this conference, we've got to have the offensive linemen represented with guys like Mario Cristobal at the helm and some of these blue-collar programs around the conference represented. So, Hayden, thanks for stopping by this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Love the parity right now in the ACC. It's certainly a lot of fun. You're going to have one of these teams that hasn't historically been an ACC dominant force win the conference this year, and I think that's great for the league. I mean, it's great that Clemson went on this run, that you've had the Florida State kind of dominance that they've had the last 10 to 15 years as well. But ultimately, it's going to be fun seeing a couple of teams that have not been a front runner in the ACC go get it done this year. Can't wait to bring more to you guys as the season continues. And Billy, thanks so much for having me.